So, 2025 is finally here, and I am zooming from my home where the neighbors have once again found an unbelievable supply of fireworks. So you might hear some explosions in the background. I'm not sure this has become a thing in downtown in the arts district. Uh, not the greatest nighttime activity for someone who loves their little home, but someone's enjoying it, so we'll let them. I have been in the wine business for a long time, and for over 30 years, have worked for various really important providers and service. I started on the floors of some of the best restaurants in Los Angeles. I got hired into distribution with Young's Market Company, now known as RNDC. I worked for Young's for several years, then went to work for a great small family winery up in Sonoma, then got hired by a major company out of New York to run the key accounts on the West Coast. And I had a number of different positions I held when I was at Co-Brand was involved with Co-Brand for almost 10 years. I started learning about wine as a way to kind of talk about wine, learn about wine. There wasn't any wine school option back in 1995 in California and Los Angeles. And so I was early to the internet. In fact, we were the very first online wine education thing because the early days of Learn About Wine was really just about me posting like blog posts and saying, did you know, and statistics and whatever other information I can accumulate. Somewhere around 2009, I decided to study for the Master of Wine. And I studied for the Master of Wine until 2014 and learned a ton. I did not pass the exam. I'd love to go back in and try to take that again, but it would require me to quit my job and probably divorce my wife and marry a wealthy woman that will support me. And my wife said that's okay. So we'll see what the future brings as far as the Master of Wine. But to my friends that have passed, you are very impressive individuals, and that is just such an achievement and something I would be very proud of. But it taught me a lot, and it kept me very involved. And along the way, I also started a small wine brand called Beekeeper, where for 10 years we really enjoyed making some of the best Zinfandel in the marketplace. And that came to an end with the pandemic. And that was really the death knell of my hopes and dreams because we were 100% restaurant distributed and weren't very well funded. So we really had to lick our wounds, and we're going to collect our pennies and dollars for another day and hopefully come back in with Beekeeper 2.0 down the line when it's right. But those are some big things that happened for me in 24. Some of those things kind of came together, and decisions were made, and final decisions were made. We were kind of kicking the can down the road for a while, but I've enjoyed my life as a wine person. I continue to work at making that the priority. Loving what I do. I can't wait to get up and go into work in the morning, whether it's to take care of the wine store that we run on a daily basis, or to do the different activities that we host, such as amazing dinners, trips, and some of the classes and activities. Just a couple days ago, we hosted one of the greatest champagne tastings I've ever participated in. Um, Recently had an amazing group of people together for a dinner tasting 1982 and 2005, and just returned from a tremendous trip to Barolo, where I uh, continue to fall in love with Barolo every time I visit, and really think it's one of the most amazing places on the planet. So that's a little bit about me, where I'm from, where I've come from, and then this last year, some of the stuff we had to work with. The store has had a record November and December. I can't say that every month was a record, but the market was quite up and down in 2024. But we finished strong, and that's healthy for us. and we're looking forward to getting through dry January. And I will be releasing a lot of wine ads this month talking about how I love dry wines. That's going to be my contribution to that topic. And it is a trend that we have been watching, the growth of no wine November and dry January, and al- alternative uh, beverages, low alcohol wine shops are now opening. Hey, I understand it's a marketplace and there's always demand for different things. But my big problem with the idea is that I think wine should have a more delineated definition. And I think if you take the alcohol out, it is no longer wine. And I think that that will keep the wine business profitable and prosperous, and kind of erase some of the confusion that happens when you start pouring, Indian spices into wine. That's not wine anymore. That's a cocktail. If you remove the alcohol, that's de-alcoholed, it's grape juice or it's fruit juice. And I just think that the confusion over wine continues to erode some of the confidence in the category. And I also believe that there's probably some quality markers that we need to kind of create a fence to protect brand wine. And these are my personal feelings. And I know that if you're non-alcoholic and others, you might be disturbed by my ideas, but I am in it for the wine business. And I believe that the erosion of wine will continue every time we add another uh, alcohol-free February and a um, mega zero wine March. We're going to have these type of things impacting our wine business. So what I'm going to do now is kind of recap a couple of thoughts, and I thought, how should I approach this? So I came in with a couple of things I want to try to share here. Let me pull up example number one. Of course, we are in 2024 and AI has had a very big year. So we're going to look at what AI is saying. The trends in wine for 2024, even if my slide doesn't want to open, we're going to do it. And I'm going to figure out how to. Give me 1 second. All right. I'm clicking, clicking, clicking. Nothing's happening. So I just went to the Google universe and I'm going to open it up myself and share with you what I was thinking here. So AI says these were some of the trends in 2024. And I have noticed an increased interest in dessert wine, but I believe I'm a little bit jaded because A, I love dessert wine, and B, my store, Merchant of Wine, I work hard to make our dessert wine selection. If it's not the best selection, it's the best I can make it. I have an enormous amount of dessert wine for a small wine store. And I believe it's a really nice cross section of high quality products that I would argue change people's minds. I'm not looking for just any dessert wine. I'm looking for really great benchmark producers. And I think if we put those four, we're getting to a point in the dessert wine category where that's all there are left. If you're still making dessert wine, you must be really good at it because the market for this product has been obliterated from the trends away towards dry wine, towards red wine. Well, dessert wine, I think, is a fighter, and I'm hoping that we continue to see increases there. AI says there is, so it must be true. But I have seen some really nice uptake in Madeira because we have an amazing Madeira section. and I have healthy sherry sales. Tokai is on fire. Um, and I think that's just because people woke up and said, "What is Tokai?" and found out how good it is, and
Mm.
saw a turn. Um, it says port on there. I would love to believe that, but I'm a little resistant to think that port's in an upward trend. However, port did a couple of things in 2024 that maybe have moved the needle, and that's A, they increased the zone in tawny ports to include 50-year-old tawny. So by dollars, I think the dollars collected by the port industry this last year were probably up significantly because everybody came out with a $300+ bottle of port wine. Additionally, a lot of the big houses started to release wines, like Taylor Fonseca released a wine from let's see, 1968 and also 1898. So they have these very high-end wines that are maybe getting a little bit of attention on spreadsheets, and they're not alone in doing so. So that might be a part of what's happening there. We already talked about non-alcoholic and low alcohol wines. I'm not going to say any more during the discussion tonight, but I've, certainly voiced my opinion. Regenerative agriculture, that's the buzzword going forward. It's no longer about sustainable or organic or even biodynamics so much. We've now captured this word and enabled it with a regenerative certification. And these are actual certifications, whether they're European or California or Napa Valley. There's almost a little bit of a race now, which is a very healthy thing for the wine industry. Regions like Champagne are trying to be first in being carbon neutral, and this type of stuff is really, who can say they were first or, taking the lead or being the leader. This is all bragging rights that they are competing for, all very healthy. And I'd say that's also we can talk about regenerative as being the captured word, but the healthy trend is I think something that's really caught fire in 24, and it's been happening for years, but in 24 you can see it throughout the through line through the entire industry. And that word regenerative is an all-time high idea. And when we were in Patagonia this year, we spent a couple of days hanging out with Bodega Chakra and their regenerative farms, and you can really see the use of biodynamics and things that need to work locally with their weather and their issues, because one set of rules don't necessarily work worldwide for whether it's Rudolf Steiner inspired biodynamics or organic certification. So we need to have a little bit of a local flavor, and I think that regenerative term also it aspires to be better than just breaking even. It's really about generating new growth and helping foster such a healthy environment that your own property thrives. And that'll be reflected in the wines of the future. We just keep making better and better wine. The problem probably for our wine industry, and we're going to talk about this as a theme as well, is that wine has gotten very expensive. The pandemic and the labor and the cost of things really shook the wine industry, and you could see 20 to 25% increases in the cost of making wine. Whether those costs got passed on, maybe they're slowly coming into the marketplace, but you're talking about bottles and cork and labels and shipping all went up tremendously. And if we could get FedEx and UPS to lower their prices, ha ha, laugh, laugh. I'm not actually joking. They are a big source of worldwide inflation, and someone should shake them at the core and remind them how important they are to the world economy. Um, so that those costs, I think, have made wine so expensive that we have returned to a day where you go to a restaurant and they have an $8 glass of beer, a $10 cocktail, and a $12 glass of wine. And it needs to be the $8 option. It should not be the least or the most expensive option for wine to be in the healthy place.
Hmm. Interesting.
Mm.
Well, I'm not seeing dollar cocktails either.
Yeah, you have to look pretty hard and far in Los Angeles for a $10 cocktail, but you can, the happy hours and stuff like that, they can get there a little bit, but it's not your better restaurants that are $10 cocktails, that's for sure.
Mm.
And they're also not the $12 wines, though.
Right.
Go to a really nice place in LA and it's $20 cocktails and $25 glasses of wine. Let's see. So we've seen some increases in wine tourism. I've benefited from that. Yes, revenge travel, sometimes as it's called. We were pent up for a while and we want to now experience things a little differently. We want to experience brands a little differently. And so the wine industry is bending in that direction. You could see places like Napa Valley, even Temecula, really becoming much more like almost like the adult theme park where you go for a fun trip with friends, four of you getting away to have an epic weekend. Santa Barbara, the hotel industries have all responded to wine destinations. There's probably a saturation now. We used to have a shortage of hotels in Napa Valley. Now we have a saturation, and I could see even learn about wine coming in with a trip to Napa Valley someday soon because the cost has bent backwards. And now there's incentive to send a group there. But even just a year ago, I couldn't put a trip to Napa together for a weekend for the same price as a trip to Sicily, Mendoza, or Barolo for a week. That is
Wow.
not an exaggeration. So we didn't go to Napa because of that, and now we might. So wine tourism, healthy, but also there's a lot of industry that is expecting a return. So we'll see how this goes. And if the current trends hold up, wine tourism will keep those trends growing. You hear that explosion? That's in my background. Those are the fireworks. Um, we talked a little bit about my thoughts about sustainability and eco-friendly wines. There's certainly that's matriculating through the entire, whether it's an $8 wine or even the organic version of Charles Shaw. We've seen the ethos of wine really continue to go at all levels. New grape varieties. That is also a huge part of what's happening right now as we've sometimes looked for grape varieties that are healthy for sustainable reasons or global warming reasons. Maybe even it's a grape variety that was maybe previously almost extinct that are now being brought back to represent a place. These are indigenous grape varieties that maybe were kind of created in these places for a reason. And so we've come a long way from the days of Chardonnay, Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, and Pinot Noir kind of being the only grape varieties around the world that people were planting. And we're seeing really unique grape varieties starting to emerge. And I don't care what country you go to, there is a story like that. We just went to Barolo and saw many of them, these little teeny indigenous grape varieties being brought back. And when I was in Argentina, there were some different grape varieties besides Malbec, kind of getting the most attention. So I think the variety of varietals is a healthy thing for the business. Tech-driven wine innovation, absolutely. Wineries embracing e-commerce, that's been happening a long time, and there's a lot of different tools and new ideas coming into e-commerce each year. We used not to even have a budget for this stuff in the wineries of yesteryear. Now we have social media directors and e-commerce directors all reporting to the general managers, and that's a healthy part of the business of wine and the wine business.
Hmm.
Yes, personalizing the customer experience has been what it's about. And if you're a customer at a winery, they want to keep you happy. They're trying to get you to come to the winery, give you reason to stay in their wine clubs. If you are a wine club member, blah, 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 they're going to do this, that, and the other thing for you. And that type of connection with wine brands is really important to certain regions in particular. And I think that wineries everywhere want to have that type of a relationship. And what will be a quantum leap is when we start seeing that type of thing happening with the European brands. I could see a day coming very soon where we're just doing direct to consumer out of Europe. No longer does it need to be the local wine shop in your neighborhood. Brands like LVMH have taken all of their champagne empire to the internet, and some of their most hard to find wines are now being sold just through them. When we're talking about the $1,000 stuff, and this is part of the pattern that's been emerging for years. We'll see what happens next. But I do think if they get too greedy, they will upset the entirety of the ecosystem. And all of a sudden, distributors will be like, oh, yeah, you're doing that. We can't distribute your brand anymore. And so there'll be this kind of a pendulum fight for who gets to sell what, and we'll see who wins that battle. My bet is the distributors. All right, those are some of the AI things I can talk on without going too long today. So let me look at my other way of looking at this, which is by putting in the 2025 and where we're going.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
this is something I've been noticing and saying out loud for a couple of years. There was a point where I'd ask everybody in the room, how many of you drink mostly red wine? And almost 80% of the hands were up in the air, maybe 90%. Red wine, Cabernet, Pinot Noir were so entrenched that I think the pendulum swings. And it happens all the time. And we went so red wine that white wine said, hey, we got to get better. White wine has gotten better. And everybody I talked to recently is talking about how much white wine they've started drinking. And we're talking about 3/4 of the wine industry was red wine. So it'll be a very interesting year, I think, 2025 for white wine varieties. And this might be a topic we kind of bring back a couple of times throughout the rest of our conversation here tonight. But white wine is doing very well. And that's because Chardonnay got better. That's because people are drinking a variety of different grape varieties from Albarino to Sancerre to basic Sauvignon Blancs of the world. There's much more involvement with some of the great classic whites, smaller productions, not just Italian Pinot Grigio, but all the whites of Italy are getting noticed. And so I think white wine is really uh, on point right now. And I've always said, Hippocrates said 5,000 years ago, drink red wine for your heart and white wine for your liver. And so this is maybe something medical science can get behind at some point too. We're getting a lot of bad news from medical science about how bad alcohol is, and this is all part of that movement. What we were talking about earlier. But we've always known that white wine can help with both your heart and your liver when used in the right amounts, and not abused. And that's the balance. That's the balance part that we all need to keep in mind. Sustainability remains keyword for 2025 here. We talked about regenerative farming and how that's all fitting in worldwide. Um, and I remember 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Whole Foods, when they, I guess it's about 25 years ago. Boy, I'm getting old. Whole Foods, when they first came out, they put out a bulletin to the wine industry and they said, we want to buy any wines that are organic, biodynamic, and it's got to be on the label. And wow, the wine industry woke up. And that's how long it takes. Here we are 25 years later, and almost everybody's got some sort of an acronym on the back of their bottle, stamping of their ethos. And this is playing out and continuing to remain a theme. The low and no alcohol wine thing is definitely going to be an issue as more and more wineries are saying, hey, okay, it's a trend. Let's try to make some of these wines. And I'm just telling you right now, you're just putting nails in your own coffin if you are teaching your clients, hey, we've heard that wine's not good, so we're going to make a non-alcohol wine to uh, give you. And I understand the argument for it, but I just think it's bad for brand wine. And I think I've pounded the table enough on that topic. Global inspired flavors. I think AI is reading a lot of press releases. That's something else we're going to talk about. I again do not think that adding tropical fruits or international spices to wine is a healthy trend. However, if you drive around the streets of LA, there's a number of grocery store brands that have billboards on the freeways, and they are making 8, 9, $10 bottles of wine that are sweet and red and have infusions of flavors to them. I would say it is, we've seen these kind of trends before, and I think it's health. That part is healthy for wine because when you're doing it at the entry level, you're introducing people to wine, and the hope is that they'll cross over and become wine fans. So this could be a good thing in some regards for brand wine at this level. Um, Wine labels, we've always needed to improve our communication tools in the business, and wine labels are, so many people buy a bottle of wine based on what the label looks like. And the industry knows this, and they've all, moved. I think one thing that should be on this list is how, with the cost of freight and our concerns of degrading the ecosystem, uh, heavy bottles are completely out of favor and out of fashion. And I think the lightweight package gives people a chance to reintroduce their brands in a more eco-friendly way. And I think that the wine label and wine bottle at the same time will be the next iteration that you're going to see at the store, the next evolution in wine marketing.
One thing,
Wine markets, yeah, go ahead.
thing I really wish that the wine labels did is, and they don't for many, many wines, they don't talk about if it's a blend, they don't say what's in it. It drives me crazy.
Well,
And
that's interesting that you say that. One battle wine's fighting is they don't want to have to list calories and all that stuff on the back label. I think this last year there that finally was passed. Like we finally got past that point where we were getting pretty close to them asking us to put that information on a bottle. And I believe that with new administrations that are coming in, that will get further removed from that. It won't get being brought back to the floors anytime soon. But good quality information about the wine and what's in it. Um, that is surprising sometimes. I think that, even a bottle of Burgundy from France, the French tend to just take it for granted that a lot of people know that white Burgundy is Chardonnay and red Burgundy is Pinot Noir. And I think that's where that stems from, is this kind of like um, elitist, slightly elitist uh, angle that maybe the wine industry needs to confront that and become a little bit more transparent and give us better quality of information that way. Just tell us what kind of grapes. I
Yeah,
think that
they're really
that's
good,
that's
and some of them don't do it at all. And I
yeah.
know that, there's certain traditions, particularly in France, but other places too, that, if it wine's from a certain region, what varietal it is, unless it's a blend. And then,
Well, we might know, but I bet you most of the people in the world don't. That sounds like a late night TV skit. Here's a bottle of this. What type of grape is in it? And they show everybody that walks through a grocery store. I bet you 99 out of 100 can't name the grape varieties in that wine. Give me the five grape Bordeaux grape varieties. What's Champagne made from? That kind of stuff. We are still in that phase of existence with wine that some people drink a lot of wine and don't know what's in it, and maybe don't even care.
well, I just think it's interesting. I mean, you're gonna,
For us, yeah, it is. It is. I love it when you can go to the internet and find great information about a wine that's easy to find. I'm looking for what's called a tech sheet, and the industry needs to do a better job of making this stuff just, you should be able to turn a bottle around, take a picture of it, and boom, this is how it was made, months in this type of wood. How were the yields? What was the total production? Grape varietal blend. All that stuff should be so much fun
yeah,
to discover.
yeah.
And the wine industry needs to wake up and realize that for sure. Here's a fun little thing: underrated collectible wine. So here's a trend that I'm going to say is going to be a big topic by the end of 2025. A lot of older people are getting to a point in their life where they have to start taking meds. Of course, there's a lot of weight loss drugs that are in the market now, and it's really hard to drink wine when you're taking those drugs. And some of them say you can't. So I do think that wine's under a lot of those type of pressures, and there's a certain population that's going to participate in that. And a lot of those people, when I go to see them or talk to them, the first thing they say, Ian, I have so much wine. And so people are the best customers in wine are people that have too much wine already, and they are starting to put some of that wine into the marketplace. Legally, you as a citizen of the United States can sell a bottle of white wine to a restaurant, to an individual. That's a white wine has to be over 5 years of age,
Hmm.
and a red wine has to be over 10 years of age. And you could sell it without a license. You could just go in and say, "Here, I got these bottles. Do you want to buy them?" That's still the law as far as I know. So check with your check online and make sure that that works for you before you quote me in a court of law. But this is a big deal, and frankly, I love it. I love being able to buy well cellared wine, from especially when I see the bottles and I look at them and go, "Wow, that was well taken care of." Great temperature control, wonderful humidity control, and I can tell the bottle's in good shape. That is, you're buying someone's time holding that wine. The customer that's selling that bottle might be making a lot of money because that wine has appreciated so much in 20 years. So that's a great economic opportunity for people that collect. And at the same time, that 1982 or that 1974 might actually be better than the current vintage wine, and maybe even less expensive, even though 1968, a great vintage in Napa Valley, my birth year. Inglenook Cabernet 1968 was about $8 when it was released. I pay about $250 a bottle for that wine now, if anybody has it. Um, and I sell it for $400 a bottle, or I use it in tastings with that type of valuation because that's what it's worth now to the market.
Wow.
So it is those 68s, those there's some 70s. Everybody wants the 74 vintage from Napa. Those are everybody found out years ago how much those are worth. If you have a Ridge 1974 blend, that can be worth $2,000. So there's certain older vintages that have really come to the forefront, and I think 2025 is the year that everyone starts to catch on because current vintages are more expensive than the older vintages that might be really interesting to drink. And by the way, Napa Valley 1960s and 1970s, those alcohols were 12.5, and those wines are still purple. Really fascinating to taste that way.
Hmm.
Wine Spectator gets a look this at this moment as they come out every year, and they kind of invented the top 100 wines. And in 2020, it comes out and now a little bit earlier than it used to. It used not to come out until like October or December 1. Now they start to hint what some of the wines are going to be in October, and they've really kind of connected with the suppliers and stuff. So the suppliers maybe even hold some of these wines, um, in the marketplace so that they can sell a bunch of them when the top 100 comes out. So it's becoming a little bit co-opted that way. And if you look at the Wine Spectator list, there are a lot of brands that support the Wine Spectator, big companies that are behind companies like Chimney Rock and BV and Concho y Toro and Antinori and Faust. These guys, if they haven't bought a full page ad in the Wine Spectator, they've definitely supported something along the way. And so this list is very much, but I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but because these are good wines, and they are diverse as well. And the Spectator's done a good job of becoming a brand, a partner for wineries. So they're supporting their partners, and I understand that when I look at this list. The compliment I want to give the Wine Spectator is how diversified this list is this year. Last year, I couldn't believe how much Chianti was on the list. And you know why there was a lot of Chianti on the list? Because big Chianti got on their horse and said, we got to get these Chiantis in front of people and make a difference for a Chianti. And I think Chianti prices have increased 25-30% as with everything else. And the big Chianti did a good job of promoting Chianti. You need to keep that up, Chianti. You need to keep telling people how good these wines are and remind people how good these wines are, because Chianti still has problem moving through the ecosystem, and there's just too much of it. It's such a huge region. So this year, the diversification is pretty apparent, almost like they had a list and they said, nope, we've already got
Hmm.
7 Brunello de Montalcinos on the list, so let's not do that. Although they do have a lot of Brunello de Montalcino on the list. Italy, France, the classics are all here. What I kind of dig about this list too is that they really are supporting the benchmark producers as well. I don't care if you're talking about the port wines or the the Merlot brand that made Merlot great. And here's Rutherford Hill Merlot, but they are a big sponsor, and that same company has Chimney Rock in their book. And so, Penfolds spent $1 billion on a winery last year. Dow out of Paso. So these are big companies that are big wine kind of oriented, but it's a good list and it's pretty diverse. And what I kind of like on the as you get into the like wine number 50, 60, 70 era is you see things like Umani Ranki, Verdicchio, and a Chocolina. These are white wines, by the way. A lot of white wines. Chablis. Here's the Royal Tokai 5 Putuños. Um, Suave Classico, Humia, and what wine from Humia Clio. Okay, it's a $200 bottle of Humia, but some here's a great old vine Riesling. So it's really diverse, and I think they did a good job of spreading that out and saying, okay, let's get everybody involved from around the world, and they did well there. Harvest 2024. So we harvest in the northern hemisphere in and around September, and in the southern hemisphere, March, April. And there were a lot of different reports in 2024. I would say, in general, the world is still, having some real challenges with weather patterns. In Bordeaux, they really made small amounts of wine, huge losses, in size of production. Maybe that's good for Bordeaux. Bordeaux's had so many of the greatest vintages of all time in the last 10 years, and a glut of Bordeaux is not what we need. Um, we have heard, from the various producers that this last vintage, we had some, big, challenges with rain and hail and heat. Um, the word drought didn't come up very much in 2024. So in general, it was kind of a wet year. It was kind of a year with higher acids and lower alcohols. And that's kind of a general statement. Actually, California may have actually come in with one of the better back-to-back vintages we've had in a while. We had a great 13 and a great 2023 and a great 2024 so far. Really balanced wines. We in California had a huge issue with 2022. I would say it's one of the more challenging winemaking vintages we've ever had. And I think other countries had that in 24, like Bordeaux and throughout Italy and other places. We saw some pretty challenging conditions. So I think trusted brands will continue to thrive because they're going to put their name on bottles and they're going to be great. And I'm actually been really surprised with how many wines I love in 2022, which was a challenging vintage in California. And maybe this is what the wine industry needs too. It's a chance for us to kind of reset some of the way things were going with total acidities being lower and riper wines, kind of lush, big, juicy fruit bombs. And now the acidity is kind of coming back and alcohols are coming down. That might be something we look back on it at this moment and say the weather made us do it. So 2025 and beyond means, here we are, day one of 2025, looking into our crystal ball, and I see, some challenges for the wine industry. Maybe these are some personal concerns that I'm going to unleash here. But I think, we see the stock market hitting all-time highs and workforces at all-time strengths. And it's hard sometimes when you're already at the top to go up. Sometimes you have to take a step back. And I think the whole world is going to take a little bit of a step back in 2025. We're going to deal with a lot of economic and governmental and population issues. We've got a lot of conflicts and a lot of things that could create some events that make the trading of wine difficult. We've got some economic challenges as things have gotten so expensive. You're going to read about how Champagne had a miserable 2024. Well, the pandemic was pretty good for Champagne, and they took their prices up so much that, of course, now they're going to be pushing back. And you know what's that is going to happen is Champagne's going to come down on their prices and crush all of these bubble producers that have come in with an alternative to Champagne, because they are being given this opportunity as Champagne approaches $80 a bottle for a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. How hard, could they collapse that price? I don't know. Maybe they don't need to, but my sense is that that's something that they could do, and maybe by the end of 2025, if you see Veuve Clicquot 49.95 somewhere again, there's a bunch of sparkling wine producers that are going to lose a lot of money, and that's why the champagne industry is so important. As they rise, they create opportunities for others to come in. And we get to a point where that $80 champagne isn't such a bad deal, but they went straight there. They went there in such a straight line that things don't usually work out that well. Going straight up to that $80 mark, they're going to probably revisit the 60, 50, maybe even the 40s again. So these are my personal ideas. We'll have to see how the world trade holds up under a new um, set of ideas with the new president, possible tariffs. The tariff situation in the wine industry worked out horribly for importers and for wine store owners. We sold very little wines with even just a 10% tariff on wine. Really put a big snafu into the business. Now, could work out okay if the dollar keeps getting pretty damn strong. We're getting real close to parity between the dollar and the euro. And if that happens, a 10% tariff might not be felt, because we can realize that with current dollar. But if we had a weak dollar, and there's a chance that the new administration will weaken the dollar, that is what we've heard. So you go a weak dollar and tariffs, that's a bad combo. So we'll see what happens there. Um, we've had the realization that there are just too many acres of land planted to grape varieties. There will be a lot of vineyards ripped out this year. These aren't usually the best vineyards. These are probably the vineyards that make a lot of low end volume wine. But from what I've heard so far is that the bulk market, which is a really important indicator, is actually being holding up pretty well. And that's because we did have some pretty small vintages in 2020 of fire vintage, 21 small, 22 small, 23 and 24 are pretty big vintages. So, but the bulk wine industry is holding up pretty well. And that means that even people, when they make extra wine, more wine than they need, they can sell it at very close to what it cost to make. The wine industry breaks when the bulk industry sells wine for less than it costs to make. And so right now, bulk wine is holding up pretty well, and we will see. And looking out past that, I can't see weather patterns or anything, but I've heard that it's been a pretty wet year in parts of the world, but the things look pretty good. Our friends in Argentina are pretty bullish on this 2024 harvest, and our friends in Europe, they had a very good 24. Some challenges, but there will be some very good wine, just not a lot of it. And so I think that's kind of the theme of wine going forward, is that maybe it's not about the quantity anymore, it's just quality that we're looking for. And there's enough quantity of wine in the world, so everyone's just going to be making a little bit of their best stuff. As far as the economic environment, I think we will see how things continue. We had some really tough months in almost done. We had some really tough months in the year 2024. March, April, May, June. We saw record restaurants close in Los Angeles. Over 100 restaurants closed in Los Angeles this year. This is a big deal for the wine industry. This is something that we need to maybe reinvent what a restaurant is. We see Michelin star restaurants closing. We see Michelin reacting by giving restaurants that don't have super good service, but they have super good food, they get a Michelin star. So there's a changing set of patterns in the restaurant world, and think it's going to be more of that same thing. There were continued closures of maybe big giant restaurants aren't going to work anymore. Maybe it's more service where you use your phone, just take a picture of the menu, you order from your phone, you pay from your phone, somebody delivers and makes sure you're all set. This seems like the type of restaurant that could survive. I also believe that there will be more dining clubs where you need to be a member coming to a market near you. We see, places like Soho House and others popping up. And there's a couple trying to open right now in Los Angeles. That membership keeps things healthy. And so I think that membership model is something that we will see more of. There's some big dining institutions in London that have spread their footprint into Europe, and the wine collectors, and that's a membership model. And I think this is where the top industry locations will bend. And we see, the number one retailer of wine in the world is Costco. They're a membership model. Maybe this is how it works going forward. And I think that's something to appreciate at this time.
Mm, mm.
There's some really phenomenal sets of information. I think I just lost you. Make sure you are seeing what I'm seeing. There's some really fascinating financial information in the Silicon Valley Bank updates. The 24 issue, I think it comes out middle of the year, April or May, but read 24 if you're interested, and look for 25 when it's announced, because it shows you the numbers. It gets all the retail sales, all the winery sales, all the big companies, and they report their taxes and everything, pulls it all together. Silicon Valley Bank does it very, very well. They are still alive, luckily. And let's see what else I want to say. I've got two more messages for you. Next week, I am doing such a fun Zoom. I've got a lovely I, I don't know if I could call her a celebrity, but she should be. She's really uh, beautiful, intelligent, and so well versed on the world of luxury. And she is helping Guy Charlemagne, which is going to benefit from the next generation taking over this year. The winemaker is the daughter, and she worked for a very long time at Veuve Clicquot as a winemaker. And her sister worked a very long time in marketing and was director of marketing for the brand Rare, Piper Heidsieck and Rare. And so there's a lot of expertise there. They're behind the new Guy Charlemagne. We've got a half bottle of champagne and a full bottle of champagne available. It's $35 for the half bottle to get involved in the champagne Zoom next week. I would highly recommend it. We'll talk about a lot of those champagne pressures, unintended, that we talked about earlier and the business, and we'll have a really lively conversation with a lot of expertise. On the 15th of January, we're doing some dessert wines. We just talked earlier about some of the popularity of dessert wine. We will feature Tokai and other great wines in our dessert wine lineup. That's on the 15th, and we're keeping these prices as affordable as we can to get you involved. We can ship these in a lot of places. So if you're interested, join us and look at Zoom into Wine. We also have a Zoom into Wine annual membership, which we will keep alive for a little bit longer, and it gives you a chance to get our membership. Membership gives you a weekly access to the Zooms, whether you buy the kit or not. It also gives you 10% off every week during the Zoom window. So you can buy any wine from our website with 10% off, and that we're increasing the value of that in 2025 as well, because we have lifted off a lot of what we call the no further discounts. There are a lot of wines that in the past, when we bought them, they were very allocated. I think that allocation thing has really um, gone away, as there's just too many restaurants not able to buy some of these wines anymore. I can not only buy that wine when I used not to be able to, but I buy that wine, I sell that wine, I can go back and buy some more. So we're getting rid of the no further discount comment on most of the wines on our website. There are going to be, and probably always will be, a few, but we used to have a lot of them, and now we have very few. So our prices are already borderline some of the best in the marketplace, and with the 10% discount, absolutely will be. And we thank you guys for joining us for Zoom into Wine. I hope you have a fantastic new year, and I will see you in the weeks to come.
Ian, I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
It's not related to this particular Zoom, so I don't want to, take up your time, Lisa. But I signed up for the Moringa tour,
Oh, Moraga.
Braga, and I signed up for the wrong date. Can you guys?
Okay. Send us an email. We'll take care of that. We can fix that.
You guys text. I want to go on the 26th. I cannot go on the 12th. Accidentally. 12th.
Just send an email. We'll get you fixed up. No problem.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Okay.
Lisa, good to see you tonight. Happy New Year. Thanks for your years of support as well.
Thank you. My new wine glass. Mm.
Oh, look at that.
I've
Which
been
one? What is that one?
Yeah, that's nice.
It's really nice. It is a Josephine, it's one of those hand done. My nephews gave it to me.
Oh, nice. Nice. I love that. It's beautiful.
Quite lovely.
I love it. It feels good in the finger too, doesn't it?
I always want to drink out of a good wine glass.
Feels quite nice, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I hope that you are able to raise many a nice wines in the days ahead. And I appreciate you both. And to everybody else that's watching this Zoom elsewhere, thank you for joining me tonight.
Cheers.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Bye.